See what we can get into. We're going to do a little bit of this Art Bell. Enjoy the stream.
By this program, Midnight in the Desert. My name is Art Bell. And we're going to have an interesting evening, I can tell already. Well, all right, Peter, welcome to the program.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Good to have you. Where are you, actually?
Nice in Los Angeles right now.
LA. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this is a subject that I just don't know a lot about, frankly. And I guess you've been chasing this kind of thing all your life. Is this new for you or what?
Well, I've been making films, as you know, for over 20 years, and I've worked a lot with indigenous peoples all over the world, and I've done a particular lot of stuff with the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of great mythology and legends and strange creatures there that are part of Native American lore. And those creatures have surfaced in their masks. And in their dances, you actually see representations of those creatures. And when I was doing those films, I started to, see some pretty familiar figures like Bigfoot, for example, the wild man of the forest or the wild woman of the forest, and they're actual characters, hair-covered creatures that appear in the masked dances of the Pacific Northwest. And I thought, well, gosh, they're depicting them so clearly. I mean, there must be some basis for this. And you can go to Europe and you can see the same exact wild man of the forest characters show up as large hairy creatures, man-like creature, and they come down to part of this carnival and festival. They do some of the same things they do in the Pacific Northwest. They steal children and they return to the forest and they take the kids, and so I started thinking about global wild man stories, and that led me to make I guess the first cryptozoology film, Sasquatch Odyssey, The Hunt for Bigfoot, which a few of your listeners might know about. And it was really my love of Native American mythology and my belief in their, they often get dismissed, indigenous people as, it's superstition and they're not scientists, and, but they're so wise, on so many levels that I don't dismiss the accounts of Native peoples as just mythology.
Well, some of it may be. It's separating the wheat from the chaff. Usually, really strong myths that survive generation after generation after generation have some basis in fact. They didn't just start from nothing. There's a reason for them. So I guess you operate on that principle, right?
Well, it's what got me into this, and then as I got into it, research that we did, and we actually got to work with the great, Peter Byrne and John Green and Renee DeHanden and Dr. Robert Krantz. So we feature the four, the horse structures. And so in working with them and going out and meeting some very credible witnesses, such as state troopers, people who are professional, wildlife officers and know what big game looks like. And when they tell you they saw a creature that is man-like, it's hair covered, it smells bad, it was, standing on the road for their patrol car, and they could clearly see the eyes, the intelligence in the eyes, but they knew it wasn't a bear, and they knew it wasn't human. That I tend to believe a guy who's been a state trooper for 20 years telling me this, he's got nothing to gain by it, you know what I mean?
I, too, tend to absolutely believe them. They're trained observers.
Yeah.
However, Peter, There is another part of me that is concerned that we don't have any hard evidence yet. There might be some hair that somebody's analyzed. There might be this or that, but by now it seems to me, in the hunt for Bigfoot, we ought to have a dead Bigfoot.
Right. Well, of course,
Unless here, they're not fully fully in this dimension. Is that right?
yes, there is I would say, a following, a group of the Bigfoot believers that, would put him into, another dimension. I tend to, certainly all the old time hunters, I would believe in very much Bigfoot on the ground and a flesh and blood creature. And people like Peter Byrne, who, began hunting the Yeti with Tom Slick in 1956 in Nepal. And this guy is a professional game hunter, and he hunted tigers and elephants in India. And, he has an explanation, when he talks about big animals, of course, particularly in the tropics, just, after 4 or 5 days, they're basically gone. And even the bones are broken down within a year and eaten by, rodents and everything else. So, you don't find skeletons of black bears in the forest. You don't find skeletons of big predators very often. And I did a show on wolverines once, and there's people that have been out in the woods all their lives that have never seen a wolverine. They're very hard to find. So picture a Bigfoot that would be 10 times as rare and probably more intelligent and elusive.
No, it's a good point. And there's a whole range of these creatures, not just Bigfoot, but along with Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Abe Elms and Goes, the Jersey Devil. I have books about the Jersey Devil.
So I've investigated all, by the way. I've been tracking the Jersey Devil in the Pine Barrens with a team, with a group of hunters, and even had a lead on a direct descendant of the Jersey Devil.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you organize and then decide where you're going to go to hunt these creatures? I mean, do you operate on tips? What do you do?
Well, in this case, in this day and age, of course, the internet has made things much more accessible, and we tried to find, in the case of Monster Hunters, which was a series I've created, and I'm a filmmaker, so I go out there, and my wife and I, we both go out there and produce these shows and direct them, and I'm often shooting myself. So I get firsthand experience, and I want to find people that are, credible, hunters. They're not just, fanatically interested in something, but they actually, have a basis for their hunts, and so that we can go out and see what they are up to. And in the case of the Jersey Devil, it's a fascinating phenomenon, because here's a bona fide American legend. Not that much is known about it by the general public. It has a fantasy, if you will, supernatural component. That is, it's born of the 13th child of Mother Eve. The 13th child, Mother Eve, late one stormy night, is going to give birth. She has 12 children. She doesn't want the 13th one. She said, let this one be a devil. And out pops the baby. The baby transforms into a demon. In some stories, kills the parents and bites their neck, and then crashes through the glass and out into the pine barrens to haunt it forever. That's the legend.
No kidding. Now, I've got some books. I have never read that. Mm-hmm. I've always read about contemporary sightings or whatever of the Jersey Devil, but I had no idea how it was, the myth behind it was.
It's a wonderful legend, because the Jersey Devil pops up at times when America is under stress, when America is about to go to war, the portent of war. It appeared just before Pearl Harbor. It appeared during the American Revolution. it was, it was shot at by Admiral Decatur, with a Commodore Decatur with a cannon shot through his wing, apparently. An American Revolutionary hero. There was, Napoleon Bonaparte's brother lived in New Jersey for a while, and he fighted in a hunting party. There were, there's been many sightings. 1911, that's when thousands of people across 3 states claimed they saw it, and there were armed shotgun riders riding on the Trolley Park in Pennsylvania, and
Wow.
and it was even at one point a fire department had the Jersey Devil trapped on the roof of a house and using a fire hose to try and get it down. And it ran into 1911, so they ran out of water, jumped down, and throwing sticks and rocks at it. And 2 policemen that same year said they shot at the Jersey Devil. What is it that, we're in the 20th century now, we're not back in Salem witch trial era. What did these so-called modern 20th century humans, what did they see? What were they doing?
I'm going to ask you to describe the Jersey Devil. I've heard Bigfoot, of course, described many times, and Chip Cropper is described many times, but I've never heard a description of the Jersey Devil.
Well, this is where it, potentially crosses over into, your kind of devil Christian iconography. I mean, he's described as having, this horse-like head and then wings, bat wings, a cloven boot, a short tail. But the head is always less devil-like, I would say, than even a camel or a devil or a horse-like head. And what's fascinating is we went into the backwoods. There's people there called the Pineys who are descendants of Texan mercenaries from the American Revolutionary War that still live in the Pine Barrens. And we were actually fortunate. They invited us to a guitar jamboree that they had there. And this is 2 hours south of New York City, right? Or less. And the Jersey Devil is their story. It's their creature, if you will. They talk about, these modern people talk about going out in the woods and cutting lumber, cutting timber, and hearing a wailing, screaming sound that is louder than their power saws, their chainsaws. And they talk about being woken in the middle of the night repeatedly over the course of a year, with screams coming from a swamp that sounded like a woman being torn apart, is how they describe it.
Yes.
So, what is this? I mean, no one's getting famous over this. They're not, again, there's people they're not making money. Something's being quiet here and lately. So, why are they describing these things? What did they hear? And there is something biological going on in the Pine Barrens, New Jersey. Maybe it's a big crane, maybe, it's speculated by some people that there's a crack in the earth there and some kind of pterodactyl has gotten on the loose.
Okay, wasn't that another way of explaining that these could be, for example, dimensional creatures? I mean, they have this way of coming and then apparently just almost instantly disappearing. So a crack in the earth into which they could suddenly go and disappear is just sort of another way of explaining that they might be, they might not be real creatures, or if they are real creatures, they have a power that we don't have to, in some way protects them and allows them to disappear virtually without a trace.
Well, I think that's another way to look at it. I mean, I'll tell you something. I've been all over the world. I've been in the Amazon many times. I've been in jungle environments. I've done, this year I did some films in haunted homes with families being played by supernatural entities. And the Pine Barrens in New Jersey is the creepiest place that I've ever been. And my hair on the back of my neck was standing up all the time when I was in there. because for one thing, it gets very dark in there. As soon as sunset, I don't know if you've been in the eastern woods, but it's like the Amazon. These cicadas or something, they start up, so you got on a level of, out of 10, a 7 out of 10 on an audio level. You're just got this piercing, buzzing sound, just like in your brain, you're trying to, like if you're trying to look for something.
I noticed it.
And then, as you're going through these dark woods, it's very easy to get lost. There are forgotten towns. There are Victorian era entire towns lost in the woods in New Jersey, where you come across old buildings and just dilapidated homes. There are graves everywhere. There are family plots. You stumble over tombstones when you're walking in the forest there.
It just, for a lot of the audience, it doesn't sound reasonable for this to be so in New Jersey, but I picture the audience, it is in fact the case of wild New Jersey. It sounds crazy because you think of Jersey, you think of a lot of New York, Madison, the city, but there's an area of New Jersey just as Peter is describing, and if you want to prove it to yourself, be my guest.
The locals don't like to go out at night. Leaf Point, which is Jersey Devil Central, you talk to several people, they don't like to wander the streets, which is the roads, the rural roads.
Peter, the other thing is, this is, it's not just New Jersey, it's not just the American Northwest. It's, for example, I'm here in the Philippine Islands right now, and there are many creatures. For example, we have something called the ocelot, half animal, winged animal, and I can assure you, this is no joke here, Peter. People not only believe in it, but they absolutely know it's true. It's an article of faith. They simply know it's true. And you might tend to chuckle at this belief every now and then, but I'm starting to think that it's worldwide, that there's absolutely nowhere, Peter, without this kind of lore, of this kind of creature.
Yeah, well, certainly the winged creatures, the Texas Big Bird, those things have been tied in. The Thunderbird, of course, and there was that sighting, I'm sure you covered it back in 2004, I believe, that was, incredible sighting up in Alaska, but some creature with a 15-foot wingspan sighted by a pilot and a passenger, and 2 independent sighters on the ground. And they described it as looking like something out of Jurassic Park.
No, how could I miss that? No, I guess you're going to have to tell me about that one. Something out of Jurassic Park. All right, Peter Together is my guest. He's an adventurer, a guy who heads off in the wild and tries to put a face, a fact, on these otherwise remarkable creatures from Manila, the Philippines. I'm our guest. It is. My guest is Peter Buck from Canada. Now, Peter puts together expeditions, camera crews, groups going out and looking for things like the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, and various other monsters. He's Dick Alston to tell us about one, which he will indeed do in just one moment. Don't move. Once again, Peter, welcome back, and we were about to talk about something seen in Alaska, and somehow that one got canceled. Tell me.
Well, I believe it was, I said 2004, it was a little earlier than 2002, but basically, I believe the first person to see it was a heavy equipment operator. Saw something from the ground that looked, thought it was an otter plane, which is up there in the transport lot. And as it got closer, you could see that it wasn't a plane at all, but a bird. the radio and told people in the nearby village to get children off the streets and they want to pick them up and take them away. A pilot who actually, because that was reported locally, heard about it, but he did laugh over it, and then he himself was flying passengers to another village up in Alaska, and he saw it along with all the passengers, and he measured it, estimating the size of a 14-foot wingspan, and looking like something out of Jurassic Park, and the local scientists, biologists said, well, there isn't anything that big that's been around here for about 100,000 years. There was some suggestion that there's a stellar eagle that flies in from Siberia that's got at least a 10 or 11 foot wingspan, much bigger than a bald eagle, American bald eagle. That if people haven't seen it before, would be quite shocking to see it. But this is mysterious, and I'm, my work with Native people in the Pacific Northwest, called the Thunderbirds, it's integral to all of their cultural activities there, and it's certainly something that appears, Thunderbirds in their mythology picked up whales out of the ocean.
Picked up whales.
Yeah.
All right, well, so this was, it is kind of like that. Anywhere you go, any travel at all in the state pretty much has to be by air. So there's an awful lot of small traffic in Alaska. They have to go by air. It's too big, too cold, it's too remote. They have to go by air, period. So, but would that be a creature like that, would it normally be that far north in the world, or most of these creatures tend to be in southern latitudes?
Well, I think so. It really, you can't imagine, other than, some huge wheel-like creature would actually get there. But for that matter, I don't really understand why the sighting of big birds being gone from the deck side. It's pretty difficult as well. What was less more easy to believe in was the idea of mythical, creatures, mountain creatures in the Amazon, and that's what brought me down to Venezuela. I was there on my friend's film expedition. He had a film we produced for Animal Planet called Real Lost World, and that's coming up on TV at the 10th on Animal Planet.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. We've got Animal Planet here, so I'm not sure that I will see it. I think on December 10th, and you went to, okay, give us a little preview. You went to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I was down in Venezuela a few years ago, a show on these big fighters that you alluded to earlier. We were going to Cape, which was Lion Cape Tarantula, and that was Mexico, and we went on to Venezuela, and we were with these local hunters, and they introduced us to their little friends, little furry friends who are 10 to 12 inches across, interplay-sized spiders that they revere as keepers of the underworld. They are part of their ceremony, which actually communicates to their dead through the body of the spider in the ceremony. And when times get tough and they have no monkeys or birds to shoot with their monkeys to fight, so they took us to a place, a cave, where they bury their dead. It's very, I would say, reverent. I like all this fight, but we're going to keep them in the presence of the bones of our dead. We're going to build this fire. We're going to say a little prayer that these spiders are available to us, and then they cook them up and, let the crab roast in Maine or Pacific Northwest, and once the hair is off, you can almost believe they're land crabs.
Oh, yummy. Land crabs.
And then,
So you actually filmed all this?
yeah, that was 2002. And when I went down there, I met people, and one of the archaeologists on our trip told me about this plateau, Arctic Continental Lost World. The granddaddy of all dinosaur and creature books and movies, where King Kong sprang from, where, Godzilla, Jurassic Park, they all came from Arctic Continental Lost World.
You found this place?
So we went there. It's on the borders of Guyana, Brazil, and Venezuela. It's one of the oldest places on Earth. It's 3.5 billion years old. This is where Africa and South America were ripped apart. And
how do you even, where is it recorded? What did you use for a reference? You know where to go.
Well, it's been speculated for some time, what is the plateau? Because people, they read about this land forgotten by time, and they wondered, well, where did Arthur Conan Doyle, the author Sherlock Holmes, where did he come up with this place? And people have speculated about Brazil, because I can tell you a bit about that. Colonel Fawcett, a legendary Amazonian explorer who was looking for Atlantis, and lost cities of gold. He was looking, he had run into dinosaurs and giant anacondas. He was a friend of Doyle's and certainly influential in this story, but when you look into it, all the facts seem to point to this place, and there's a clue in the book, The Lost World, where one of the characters, Lord Roxton, he points to a map, and he says, down here in the Amazon, where the three countries meet, this is a place where anything could exist, anything is possible. And, well, the place where the three countries meet is Mount Roraima. And if you look at it, it's a 9,200-foot plateau, and it rises over a mile above the surrounding jungle.
What is it geologically or otherwise about this plateau that makes it so much more likely to host the kind of environment you're talking about here than anywhere else in South America?
Well, because it's so darn old. Because, as I said, this rose out of the ocean when the continents split apart. It was suspected, for a long time that, animals, plants, creatures, what have you, were isolated. And there are quotes directly from scientists, Victorian scientists, that were speculating as to what could be there. But even before the Victorians laying on the axe in the 1800s, Sir Walter Raleigh was the first to report the plateau. He was looking for El Dorado, the lost city of gold, and he believed he described Roraima as a place of gold and diamonds. And so for 3 centuries, people tried to get to the top of this mountain. It was
Sorry, let me just interrupt you for a second. It does sound geologically isolated. Is there any chance, Peter, that they felt that this was a isolated environment that would have sort of, I don't know, I guess, where time sort of stopped and the environment there has virtually remained the same thousands of years ago, or even more till now?
Absolutely. That's what people believe, and I can, and as I tell you this story, I will tell you that they were right. And there's a fascinating story here. I mean, the Victorian explorers, people began to the great, colonial expansion, of the early 1800s. Explorers went all over the world looking for new places, and ultimately were part of colonialism, territorial expansionism, what have you. But really, what was driving it initially was orchids.
Orchids.
Orchids drove the colonial explorers from Britain. People wanted rare orchids for their collections in England. And the Kew Gardens was the Grand Botanical Conservatory in London, and they sent people out. There was also the Royal Geographic Society. Now, what was great about the background to the Real Lost World, well, our movie's The Real Lost World, but The Lost World of Roraima, the plateau, is that this was a time when people were just starting to find dinosaurs. In the 1830s, the first bones were being discovered in England. Now, this is before Darwin, so these certainly weren't recorded in the Bible. These were things that cropped up, basically dragons in our backyard. What are these? At the same time, you've got explorers coming back from places all over the world with pretty well a new creature every couple of months. Pygmy hippos, like 1911 Komodo dragon, the okapi, and all kinds of fantastic new animals. Gorillas were discovered late in the 1800s. Amazing finds from all over the world. And so people believe anything is possible. On top of that, the dinosaurs being discovered, and they built first dinosaur theme park in London in 1853. And we went there and we filmed for our film, The Real Lost World. We filmed in this park, which is untouched. These are life-size dinosaurs standing outdoors in a very, exotic environment with trees and grass and bushes. And they're amazing. And so people demanded, and there were newspaper editorials from the time saying, why have we not gone to the top of Roraima? What secrets lie up there? And they virtually demanded the Royal Geographic Society and explorers to discover what awaits at the top. And they believed dinosaurs might be there. And the RGS, Royal Geographic Society, sent two explorers, Everett Stern and Harry Perkins, in 1884. And our film, we take a modern team of scientists and they follow in the footsteps of these two explorers to get across the swamp, down the rivers, across the savannah, and up the 9,200-foot mountains, and then into a new cave system, which has only just been discovered 2 or 3 years ago. And we take a biologist along to see a cave biologist to see what lies inside the cave.
Brave man. So across swamp, rivers, savannah, mountains, then finally caves that nobody's probably ever set foot in or had for a very long time. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. And you filmed in there.
We did. And to add to that the native people, the Everett Stern and Harry Perkins reported in their journals, which I've read, creatures described to them by the Indians. The Indians feared Mount Roraima. They feared the mountain. Ayantapui was considered the Devil's Mountain. There were spirits at the top. Roraima was spoken of in hushed tones. It was where the waters, mother of all waters, what Roraima means. And they didn't venture to the top. That's why so little is known about it. The Indians never went there because they feared what lay at the top. And so the explorers retailed water dragons, flying reptiles, bizarre, eternal-like creatures, huge, 20 feet across.
Some kind of dinosaurs.
Yeah. And so what I wanted to do on this trip, I would say my grandest adventure yet, is take a team that ended up being 20 cast and crew, 60 porters to get us to the top, 3 cameras, helicopters at some point to shoot some of this, and a big crane. And we made we filmed this entire trip on high definition video. It's going to be on Discovery HD.
Good for you. I love high definition. I'm missing terribly over here. High definition is an absolute new world into whatever's being shot. It's just wonderful.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, we're going to be premiering the show on a big screen here in Los Angeles tomorrow night, actually, and it's just fabulous, even like 30, 40 feet across. So it looks amazing. And
Well, Peter, I've got to ask. You don't have to answer because you're very close to the debut. But I've got to try. Did you catch anything on film that you've been describing?
well, this is what I'm going to tell you. I think if we caught a dinosaur, you might have heard about it by now. But what we were doing were we were on a mystery hunt. We were on an investigation, and that meant that we were speaking to villagers, to shamans. We were going with local guides to places where these creatures had been sighted. For example, this beautiful Canaima Lagoon, 7 cascading waterfalls that run off from Angel Falls, 3,200 foot highest waterfall in the world.
Wow.
Where this water dragon, Rato, is said to live, and as recent as just a few, 3-4 years ago, there were people dragged off the beach there by this creature. The tales of the Didi, the ape man. Now, people forget with the lost world that it's not just dinosaurs. Conan Doyle has a whole tribe of Sasquatches, of Bigfoot, in his book. And there's a wild man, again, the same, you see in European, even the European coat of arms has, royal families have this Bigfoot-like creature in their coats of arms. So here's this wild man now in South America, and they're called the Didi by some people. And every tribe, and we went to several tribes there, and they all have an account, and when they tell you about it, it's not like, oh yeah, we used to have this story about that or something. It's like, no, this thing, people are very afraid of that. We've been lucky. It hasn't been here for a while, but this is what it does, and it hunts and eats humans. And when they tell you about it, it's not just like some story, but it's part of their forest life, like any of the other animals.
It hunts and eats humans. Again, we have a creature here, Philippines, that does the same thing. It hunts and eats humans, and it's not a laughable matter. Of course, people from the West would tend to chuckle about this kind of thing. And if you lived in a city all your life, you definitely would chuckle about this kind of thing. But there's no chuckling going on here, I can assure you, Peter. This is a deep, ingrained, strong belief. And I'm sure what you ran into is exactly the same thing. Hold tight, Peter. We're at break point from Manila in the Philippines, where the typhoons come this year. I'm Art Bell. Land of Dragons, actually, here, Japan. This will be the Land of Dragons. Peter von Puttkamer is my guest. He's a monster hunter. He just did a high-def video trip down to South America looking for monsters. More from Peter in a moment. All right, here's Peter von Puttkamer once again. Peter, how big was this group that went on the expedition?
Well, we handpicked a team. We kept putting together a dream team, if you will, spider experts, arachnologists, snake experts, cavers, one of the top cave biologists in the world, Dr. Hazel Barton. was in the IMAX Journey into Amazing Caves show, and also Dean Harrison, who's a cryptozoologist in Australia, and he has a large group there, Australian Hominid Research.
So in total, about how many people?
Well, all told, with our 5 team members and then our film crew and support team, we were about 20.
Wow.
And then we needed about close to 50 quarters to get us up the mountain with our gear. And so it was a real expedition. It was full, I would say 2 weeks of hiking, camping, trekking, and caving as part of this. And now all the while, I mean, yes, we're there to explore legends of dinosaurs and ape men, and there is the cryptozoology component. There's also the animal component, which kind of intersects because, for example, the anaconda, we actually went into a swamp and pulled 18, 20-foot anaconda out of a pool of water as part of our expedition.
Really?
And you will see us do all of these amazing things.
Yeah,
And
let's hit that again. You said December 10th.
yeah, and December 10th on Animal Planet, and December 17th is the repeat, and also December 14th on Discovery HD Theater, High Def Theater.
That's great. Now, again, I don't want you to give things away here.
Yeah.
But, did you find any hands-on evidence? Now, obviously, you did interviews with indigenous folks.
Yes.
I'm sure heard all kinds of stories, but
Yeah.
do you see anything that you can talk about?
Well, I just want to. Yes, we did, but it was unexpected, and it may lead us to clues about life on other planets.
What?
So
What?
I'm going to get to that in a second. What we did really look at, because you have to understand that Colonel Fawcett, who was a friend of Conan Doyle, described in his journal shooting a 62-foot anaconda very close to that area. So we wanted to pursue that and find out, and we have Dean is actually setting up camera traps and so on to see what he can capture. There's also the 23-foot Orinoco crocodile that weighs as much as a Honda Civic. And so our question was, could some of these tales be related to existing animals, to giant versions of these huge reptiles that we know exist there? And, you know, that was very intriguing because Colonel Fawcett described a Diplodocus, a huge brontosaurus-like creature that he spotted in the swamps there. There was a sighting by a European in the 1950s in the lagoon of a plesiosaur-like creature. We also had descriptions from, like, not villagers, but actual guides and game people in one of the wildlife refuge areas we were in, who were telling us, you know, as a child, seeing an anaconda coming up to a man's hip in thickness. So the school bus had to stop to let it cross. So this thing was at least 60 feet long. It's like thicker than a telephone pole around. So if you start to think about dinosaurs and these, you know, what these could be, then, you know, maybe they relate, you know, to anaconda tales. And that's part of what we were investigating, are, you know, that.
Here's a question just off the hip before we get to this big thing you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Look, Peter, suppose you had actually found dinosaurs. Suppose you had actually found something that eats people. I mean, were you prepared to deal with something of that kind? I mean, did you take along a lot of guns, a lot of something to protect yourself?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that would have gone across too well with the Venezuelan paramilitary forces that are ever present when you're down there.
Yeah, I spent some time in Caracas, and I found it to be
Caracas is pretty edgy.
It is edgy. There you go. That's the right word. Edgy. A little scary.
Yeah. That's the one man at our hotel had a sawed-off shotgun.
Oh, well, that's not unusual. Everybody has a sawed-off shotgun here. It was more than that. I mean, I saw automatic weapons. I saw people were. I was shooting photographs in Caracas, and I shot something that I guess I shouldn't have shot. And one guy looked at me and drew his finger across his throat, like, "Do that again, and you're dead, man."
Wow.
That's a deep memory in Caracas.
Yeah, of course. Once you get outside of that big city, which I think has a higher crime rate than even Bogota, Colombia now. Caracas is actually, when people tell us, "Oh, Colombia is no problem. You should go. Colombia is great," And then, anyway, but if you go outside, it's like people anywhere. I mean, you don't want to go too close to the Colombian border because people are being kidnapped. That's always your biggest fear. Your biggest fear when I'm in these situations generally is not the animals; it's the humans. You got to watch for. Yeah. But we were in the midst of many strange poisonous creatures there. I mean, day to day, the stuff we've got to watch for is fairy lance, one of the most deadly snakes in the world. It hides in the tall grass. It's invisible even on our high-def cameras. I mean, I had to go in and sort of highlight things in post so we could see the darn thing because it's so perfectly camouflaged, and our snake experts at Field is, very, very close to this thing. And if these bite you, and I know you have lots of these critters in Manila as well, in the Philippines, but the fertilized attacks red blood cells, so if you get bitten by one of these, if you don't die outright, then your limb may turn black and fall off. If you don't it's pretty well certain you're going to lose the limb if this thing bites you. So,
yeah, of course, we have rainforest here. And, there are just, there are giant areas where there's just nobody. If you go in there, you are truly taking your life in your hands. An amateur, of course, would be suicidal.
Absolutely. And even handling, Rick West, our arachnologist, I mean, he was finding new species of tarantulas there, some of which were, again, 10, 12 inches across. And if you don't know what you're doing with those, you're going to get bitten too. And these are actually bird-eating tarantulas, birds, and also a giant foot-long centipede that we caught. These, of course, dinosaur era descendants were 8 feet long. We had a mere foot-long centipede that eats mice and frogs, but it's extremely, painful bite and can make you very ill. So,
all right, you just said something we have to follow up right away.
Yeah.
You said you found something that might indicate extraterrestrial what?
Well, we, of course, as I said, we're looking for very, very huge creatures, as were the original explorers. I mean, they went there to gather plants, they went there to mark the boundaries, but they also were looking and expecting dinosaur-like creatures when they got to the top. When we got to the top, what we found was one of the most amazing landscapes on the planet. It was described by the explorers as a fantasy land. It's like a set from Star Trek. There's windswept geological formations that look like predatory dinosaurs, among other things. Incredible creatures and shapes. And even if you scale all the time and you're climbing up, Indians are telling you, if you're talking, I'm a director and I'm yelling at my crew or something, and they're going, the native people are getting upset because you're upsetting the spirits on this mountain, and they don't want.
And again, so the audience understands.
Yes.
When you say the top, you're talking about an elevation of 9,000 plus feet.
That's right.
That must be an entirely, oh my God, at 9,000 feet, you have a complete new climate from down below. I mean, completely new.
You're climbing to a tape to the top, but through a forest that's got, vipers in it and bullet ants, these ants that have venom that's like a snake that can actually kill you or put you in the hospital. You've got a whole variety of things that can get you on the way up, and then there's a 45-degree slope. Now, this mountain was considered unclimbable for decades, and people went around and around and around it looking for a way to the top, and it was never a concern that we can see his journey in our show, and we follow up the same 45-degree ramp that he took, and it's part of it is clinging to the cliff. It's what you see is a narrow pathway with foliage around it. So when you're in it, you aren't as aware of sort of a 3,000-foot drop to your left. But if you were to go off the path a couple of feet, you'd soon find out that it's a long way down.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine bringing a camera crew, 20 and then 50 people.
Yeah.
Things, right? And did you lose anybody in this process?
No, we had a medic along. we were very mindful of that. We were lucky in that it didn't rain. It rains is incredible. It's called the mother of all waters for a reason. And if you were to hit that mountain on a deluge day, it's just a part of the clay face. So as you're scrambling up a steep slope, you'd be dealing with slippery red clay, and you'd be all over that mountain.
How long did it take you to go from the forest canopy cover to the top?
It took us a week.
A week, wow. And once you reached the top, how much geography was there? And describe, if you can, what you saw.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying is that we got up there. As you come to the top, again, it wasn't quite the same feeling as the Jersey Devil and being in the Pine Barrens, but the first thing are these large. They remind you of the figures from Easter Island, but they're not man-made. It's like the hand of God touched this place, and you're looking at three sort of guardians of the gate. As you get to the top, they hover over. They're black, and they're very unusual shape. You'll see them in the film. And everywhere you look are little gardens, so you'll have these huge black shapes that look like animals and dinosaurs and tortoises and creatures, and then these little delicate gardens with flowers. And what the first explorers found were that, they were right. It was a lost world, and it is a lost world. And there are thousands of plants that exist nowhere else on Earth except on these debris, the plateaus. Some of them, hundreds, are endemic, unique to Roraima Plateau alone. There are dozens of animal species, so insects, frogs, mice, a whole variety of birds. That,
in other words, it had its own ecology.
It does, and they're all black. So the butterflies are black.
They're all black.
They're all black. The lizards, they're black.
Why?
Well, as our cave biologist explained to us, all the rocks, black color of the rock, if you crack the rock open, they're white inside. What's on the rock is a layer of black microbes. And life adapted for two reasons. One, to blend in with the rocks for camouflage, but also to dissipate heat. It's very hot there, right on the equator.
Even at that altitude.
Yeah. it cooled down. I mean, at night it went close to freezing.
Uh-huh.
And at daytime it would soar up to 90 degrees. Of course, down below it's 120 degrees. But it does cool down at the top. And no one knew until very recently that there were caves, massive caves. In fact, the oldest caves on the planet, on the top of these mountains.
Wow.
They're 125 to 150 million years old.
Peter, if there's anywhere on the globe where I would think that a species could exist and ignore the changes of time, it would be a cave like that. Now, caves,
Yeah.
when you go into the Earth, the temperature tends to stabilize. I don't care what part of the Earth you're in. If you're below the Earth or in a cave, the temperature tends to stabilize. I think in the mid-50s somewhere. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it is definitely the caves of the world I'd say along with the deep oceans, the last frontier. And we know probably less about, caves and the deep earth than we do about the deep ocean, because we've done quite a bit of exploring the deep ocean, but not so much in caves, especially not very deep. And of course, our cave biologists are some of the best on the planet. Dr. Hazel Barton and Peter Sprouse is one of the most fabulous cave guys you'd ever wanted your backup man on a trip. I mean, he's uncanny. He's Spider-Man in the cave, and these are people that can go down for weeks at a time, miles underground, jumping off of ravines, miles underground, rappelling deep under the ground. So these caves on Roraima are the fourth largest quartzite caves in the world. Now, another magical part of this mountain is that there's crystal rock, quartz crystals lying everywhere. So it's like the Wizard of Oz or something. You've got these shapes all over. You've got these pristine, beautiful little gardens, and then you've got quartz crystals that are magically scattered on the paths, scattered in the pools. And when you go into these caves, and the caves that they found, the Czech cavers found it, but they weren't scientists, and they didn't investigate it with a scientific team. We were the first to do that. So what we found inside, it was named crystallized caves. And as you come into the cave, you'll find embedded on the floor these two holes that have been dug out like two giant eyes, and inside they're filled with quartz crystals. So you have the red color of the cave and these bright white, like white eyes staring at you.
Yeah, this is like going into a different world.
Yeah.
I really want to see this. Do you know what time it's due to air on Animal Planet?
Yes, I believe it's 8 o'clock. It's in prime time Sunday showcase on Animal Planet.
How long is it? Is it 1 hour? 2 hours?
No, it's a 2-hour special.
Good.
And now I can tell you, I can tell you about what you were asking. And
well, we've got to break things up.
Okay.
I'm going to have you hold it. It's always, but find something that perhaps indicated extraterrestrial life.
yeah,
It was, what would you call it? The surprise of the
it
expedition?
was a surprise, and I will say that NASA is funding our cave biologists on a return trip.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
The funding for the trip that you did that come entirely from Animal Planet, or?
Well, we have to be clever as filmmakers, and we get some money from the broadcasters like Animal Planet,
Right.
and we got some funding from Canada Outdoor Life Network, where, by the way, for the Canadian listeners, on October 17th, it's going to air on Outdoor Life Network.
There you go. All right, Peter, stay right where you are, and when we come back, we'll talk about whatever it is that Peter found that might indicate extraterrestrial life, and that might be just the place that you find something like that. From Manila, the Philippines, I'm Ardell. A 2-hour high-definition trip to a lost world at the top of a plateau, 9,000 plus feet in Venezuela. Not something I do, but something I certainly am going to want to see. It's coming up on Animal Planet about 8 p.m. Peter von Puttkammer is my guest, and he tells us while he was there, he found something of such interest that there's going to be a return expedition funded at least in part by NASA. That's coming right up. Peter, NASA has a pretty tight budget these days, to put it mildly, so whatever it was you found had to be awfully interesting for them to pony up any money at all. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, we had to get into these caves, okay? So there's various entrances, and we experimented with several entrances, including propelling a team of people to get, inside. We really didn't know what to expect. We heard some reports. I mean, the Czech cavers had reported giant lobsters inside the caves. I mean, that was the description. So we were kind of anxious, and, part of the trip like this, well, what is, we know what we're going to explore. We know we're going to be able to tie together, the Lost World dinosaur legends with the native stories told to explorers, which were then told to Conan Doyle. So we were pretty sure that we could find that connection, and we did. And then what were we going to find? Well, as far as, physical, like biology that's unusual. Well, as it turns out, this place has been, separated from the rest of the jungle for thousands and thousands of years. Its life on top of its mountains got separated from the jungle by 3,000-foot sheer cliffs. There's no relationship between the species on the mountaintop and the jungle. So this area gets 30 feet of rain a year. There's no soil. There are floating islands of plants. It's a totally bizarre landscape. There's a frog there that's only related to a frog that's in Africa. And it only lives on that one buoy. It only lives on Roraima and nowhere else in the world. So going to the caves, we were very anxious to see what might be in there. And
anxious, I imagine anxious is a word. There's other words I can think about before I do it, but anyway.
So as we went in there, we made 3 separate forays into the caves. And as I say, these turned out to be the 4th largest caves of their kind, mainly quartzite caves, but they're very, very ancient, at over 125 million years. That's significantly older than most caves in this country. And what we started noticing, one of the first things you notice is that there's massive spider webs everywhere, 3, 4, 5 feet across. And we're looking for different life forms at this point. And one of the first things we found was a brand new aquatic species of cricket that are about 3-4 inches long, that have never been seen before, and extremely unusual, see something like that in there. And then, Dr. Hazel Barton is specifically there. This is a lady who's gone down 700 feet through moving ice crevasses to find microbial life that's been left over from the ice age, okay? So she's a hardcore lady, and she's looking for things that are unusual, because she's advised NASA on life on other planets and how life might evolve, because we're always looking for the obvious. We're looking for the way life typically evolves on Earth, but what if creatures are living or growing on a very small scale? And what if they're eating things that aren't the norm? And what we started finding were these unusual formations, and they look like stalactites. But there's no water in this cave. The stalactites are formed from dripping limestone, typically.
Yes,
right?
indeed. Yes, of course.
And what we figured out, and Hazel figured out, is that what we're seeing are the remnants of spider webs that are coated with something that have been growing and getting longer for maybe 150,000 years.
No, that's weird.
So,
Right. In other words, these appear to be or seem to be solid in the sense of, well, I don't know, like something that was. I don't even know what you're talking about. In other words, I can imagine what you're talking about, but I can't imagine how a spider web turns into that and then gets.
what you're seeing are giant, elongated, what look like sugar-coated formations hanging from the wall.
You know,
And they get referred to as carrots too, because they can kind of resemble that, but they're organic. I mean, they're so the question was, are these microbes eating the spider web? Is that what we're seeing? Are we seeing microbiology at work here? And as the spider webs are abandoned over time, that these colonies of macro life, as it were, microbiology starts growing down the spider web. So Hazel basically, studied it and was actually quite blown away, because what she's figured out, and this is what she's going back to find out more about, is that these are basically microbes that are eating the glass walls, that is silica walls of the cave. And what we're seeing,
silica. No, wait a minute. They're eating silica.
they're eating silica, and that's never been observed before in a cave ever. It's
Eating silica.
yeah.
That's life. That's not the life we understand.
No, exactly. And so what we're seeing is the sediment that's deposited from the microbes eating the silica and the walls, and is landing. It's like the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. The spider webs are just the outer sign of life at work, life that's developed very slowly over hundreds of thousands of years. But the signs are what it leaves behind, and what it leaves behind are the fine dust particles that it's chewing away on in the walls of this ancient cave, 125, 150 million year old cave.
Well, we have to understand how silica can be used as a nutritional source for anything.
I know.
That's weird.
And literally, Hazel goes all over the world. She studied, as I said, up in Greenland. She's been underwater in limestone caves in Mexico. She's been in all kinds of environments, and she's never seen anything like this.
Was she pretty sure that was what was happening?
She was so sure that as soon as she got home, she wrote the Kentucky Space Grant Consortium, which receives money from NASA, and they have granted her the money for a return trip.
I can see why. Now, if you're in the guessing mode here, do you think that this is life that adapted in this weird environment to begin to eat silica, or do you think that this life is life that originated elsewhere and is able to survive on silica?
Well,
or is that just too much to guess?
More when people goes back with her. It takes a while to get, and you mount an expedition, even like ours, like to get collection permits is a huge deal in foreign countries, right?
I know.
So Hazel has to work with universities, she has to work with government agencies. You can imagine the bureaucracy embassy in Venezuela to
I
get
can do it better than imagine.
So the next step is to be granted the collection permit to now go back and prove her findings. And but this is a lady who's working on the highest level in the world on these kinds of discoveries. So she's quite certain that this is what she's seeing.
Well, if she's really got it. If she can prove that there's a life form existing, eating has nutritional value as silica, then that opens up even the probability that life, perhaps as we don't understand it, but could understand it through this, would exist on other planets.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, we're always looking, we're looking for water-based life forms, looking for carbon-based life forms.
Of course.
We're looking for things that are like planet Earth. But the fascinating thing is, and this is a great lesson of our search, and it's a great lesson of the explorer's search, is that you go looking for dinosaurs, and you find a lost world, all right, but it's completely unexpected.
No. This is really a big discovery.
Yeah.
So she's when will the next expedition possibly occur?
Well, she's I'm hoping that it's going to be within the next 6 months. I mean, I know.
Do we get a good look during this 2-hour special at what you're talking about right now?
Absolutely, yeah. We shot the heck out of it. We got a lot of great shots of it. And, I mean, first of all, I want to say that inside these caves, some of these rooms are the size of cathedrals. I mean, they're massively huge. And, we had to haul our lights in there and light this up so you could see it. And
I'm sure it was a logistical nightmare, all of that, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And then we made another discovery, which was quite fascinating, is that we sent one of our cameramen, who was a ex-Czech army guy, who I had no hesitation in, said, Nash, go down that hole, follow that paper down that hole. and so they're crawling on their hands and knees through miles of tunnels. And in this cave, the ceiling, if you so much as tap it with your head, pieces of the ceiling flake off and fall down all around you.
Not my kind of place.
So they're crawling on their hands in the dome. We filmed all of it. And they find a long-lost animal down there, a skeleton of a mammal that likely wandered in there. It could have been 10,000 years ago. I mean, we don't know, but it was another interesting discovery because no one has ever found the remains of a larger mammal on top of the mountain before.
Peter, because you did not have, I presume you did not have collection permits.
Yeah.
You were not allowed to
right.
collect any samples.
That's right. One of the things that's neat about this place is that they've placed. I mean, you hear about Chavez and all that sort of thing, but their parks and their areas, like this entire area was declared a World Heritage Site, right? Back in the 90s, and it's looked after by the local Pomone Indians, and they let the native people whose sacred mountains these are basically be the caretakers. And you don't go to this area and you don't go to the top without their say-so. And we had to clear this with, you meet the chiefs, you meet the shamans, and you negotiate, and you help them out a bit, and they work as Sherpas for you and bring stuff to the top. But they are very watchful. They don't want people picking up crystals and taking them off the mountain. They don't want someone pocketing a rare black frog of her Lima and take it down with them. So they're watching, and they make sure that people don't take things, and you can negotiate for collection permits, and it can take a year or more to get them.
still the temptation to grab a crystal, to grab something that it just must have been overwhelming.
Sure, I mean, people love to take,
And if you or somebody in the Inquisition had, in fact, taken a sample, you certainly couldn't tell me about it, could you?
No. And what'll happen to you there is the Pomone, who are amazingly resourceful and clever people, and they're just like watching all the time. They're watching to help you out. I mean, it's not like they're sort of like nasty. They're very nice and they're very helpful, and they're usually watchful in a good way. They don't want you to get hurt and things like that. And but if someone took something from the mountain, they turn you into the National Guard, and you end up in a South American prison for a little while, which isn't so good.
Right, and I'm sure that, of course, you're going in and out of customs and that sort of thing as well, so
well, some of
yes, you'd be discouraged from it.
Some of the other kinds of adventures, I mean, we just talk about the animals and the perils of the trip, but, some of the other things you encounter you don't expect. We come into this jungle camp, and here's this, you've always got to be careful in South America, and here's this bar, outdoor bar, and there's a beautiful woman behind the counter, and there's like 6 soldiers with Uzis sitting at the counter, and I'm already telling my crew, okay guys, hands off the bar girl, because we could get into serious trouble here. And then we find out that she's married to this guy who's like works for the Foreign Legion. He's a professional mercenary, been all over the world, killed at least 200 or 300 people in the course of his career as a soldier.
Several of whom, no doubt, kept his girlfriend.
And he's this Swiss guy, and he's very affable, and he goes down to the Amazon tributary and plays 20-foot alpenhorn for us. They said, oh yes, you must hear my horn, We go, oh, very nice, of course we'll listen to you, Mr. Killer Murderer. And then people are telling us stories. When Frederick over there, he was called in to help resolve a prison uprising. He personally, there was an uprising in a local prison, and he went in with some of the Venezuelans and killed over 100 people in a prison uprising.
Oh my God.
So you got to be careful, not just with the animals, but you're very careful about when you meet people down there.
Well, Peter, I've been telling Americans now for many years, before I left America, my latest adventure here, that Americans have just got to, somehow or another, get out and see some of the rest of the world. It gives you such a different perspective on where you live and what you have to see some of the rest of the world. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Venezuela is a fabulous country. It really is. And Caracas has got its problems, but when you get outside, you're going to see some of the most incredible scenery and beautiful places on the planet that you'll ever see. And of course, it helps to have a good person taking you there. We had previously worked with a guy named Juan Carlos Ramirez, Acanan Tours, and they helped keep things organized, and they helped us find animals when we needed to film animals, and they were safety people, and they took care of us when we were rappelling down into caves and so on. So you've got to have good local people.
Even with good local people, even with the best of everything, there's still a lot of danger in what you did.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we risked our lives every other day there, just even being on the Grand Savannah, the walk to the Lost World, one of the big, probably one of the most dangerous things about the trip was lightning strikes. Mm-hmm. And they were very cognizant of that. And whenever there was rain or anything coming in, we were hunker down under the next shelter as quickly as we could, because you do not want to be out on a massive open savanna in a lightning storm. And similarly, you do not want to be on top of this mountain. And I'll just say that this mountain is not for the faint of heart. When you get to the top, now picture that it's 30 feet of rain here. So typically, you go up there, and there's, first of all, there's crevasses when you get to the top. And
30 feet of rain here.
so there, you can, the rock formations form mazes. So even on a day when there's no fog, you can get lost. You can easily lose your way and then fall down a 300 or 400 foot crevasse.
That would be the end view. Peter, hold tight. We're up there. Hold on. When we get back, we're going to open the phone line. So those of you that know the portal numbers, feel free to join us now. I'm Art Bell. Morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. Peter von Puttkammer is my guest. He went to a lost world in Venezuela. One of the things that he found was a microbe that apparently eats silica. Now, if you think about that a little bit, as Tom in Texas did, said, holy cow, silica-eating microbes, modern computers, not a good combination. Imagine some of these things get loose in an Intel lab somewhere, or even just around your computer. I'm also seeing people sending me fast blasts suggesting they're seeing on the internet that maybe as many as 1,000 were killed here in the typhoon. I surely hope that it's not that many, but I'm afraid I imagine it might be. All right, those are the numbers. If you'd like to join us, ask a question about an amazing expedition that you're about to be able to see on the Animal Planets, December 10th, 8 o'clock in the evening, local time, for all of you, wherever you are. I hope you'll take the opportunity to take a look-see. This incredible expedition that Peter just came back from. I'm Art Bell. Here are a couple of computer questions that I think are pretty good ones. Joe in Detroit, Michigan asks, how much roughly, just some ballpark figures, did the expedition cost? It must have been a lot.
It cost approximately $75,000.
$75,000. Okay. Well, actually, that's not as much as I might have imagined.
Now I'm saying, that's pretty well on the ground. If I were to add in camera costs and all of that, it'd be significantly higher. Obviously, I don't really want to give you the whole budget of the film at this point, but suffice it to say, it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm sure it would. All right, and Jackie in North Las Vegas, Nevada asks, please ask him if he has the longitude and latitude at the plateau. There are some people out there who would like to go to Google Earth, I guess, and look at it on, by satellite.
Oh, gosh. At my fingertips, I don't have the longitude and latitude, but you could certainly go put Google Earth Mount Roraima, and you'll be able to see exactly where it is. Mount Roraima, Roraima, in Venezuela. And we also have this website, thereallostworld.com, and I believe there's a link even on your Coast to Coast site on that. You can read some more about it. For people who are in the LA area, we have a few seats left for the premiere, and we're going to have a high-def projection of it here in surround sound. It's some information on the website about that. That's actually tomorrow night for people in the LA area. So there's a lot of previews and things coming up. You can view a little bit of the trailer, and you get to see what this place looks like on the site, and it's a pretty phenomenal place. You know what's really fascinating? I think all of us grew up with, dinosaur movies and, journeys to fantastic places. And The Lost World has been done many times as a film. The first one was 1925, was the original, creature.
Oh, I think I've seen them all, actually.
Yeah, and Wallace Beery was in the first one, and Willis O'Brien, who did all the effects for King Kong, cut his teeth on The Lost World. That's where they worked out all the claymation, all the stop motion. And what was so fascinating is 7-8 years later he does King Kong, because The Lost World was the granddad of all of them. And it's really fascinating. Arthur Conan Doyle was a friend of Harry Houdini's, and they took The Lost World and they presented it to a group of magicians in New York, and he defied them to figure out how they did it. The magicians just could not figure this out, because this is the first time anyone had seen huge dinosaurs depicted on screen with people walking in the foreground and shooting at them and being chased by them. And by today's Jurassic Park standards, it's pretty primitive, but you can certainly see how people would have been blown away by this.
Well, Peter, as they say, this one's in the can. So,
yeah.
What do you imagine to do next? Are you gonna stick with this genre? Do you have something else planned that you can talk about?
I'm working on I was back in the Amazon this year. I'm working on another slightly different documentary, but it's pretty fascinating. It's a story of the greatest botanist explorer of the 20th century, Richard Evans Schultes, and among his 2,000 plant discoveries were several well-known hallucinogens, beginning in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and it's an adventure tale on the footsteps of Richard Schultes, and what happens to the West when these sacred plants of indigenous peoples that were used very specifically in ceremony ended up hitting the West and impacting our culture, and how the jungle discoveries of Richard Schultes led to the psychedelic era.
Fascinating. Well, in that area, obviously there were plants, there were animals that are not elsewhere on the earth, and I think we all know from having watched a lot of films, Peter, that it may be that the next cancer cure or the next cure for some terrible disease will be in one of those plants that just don't grow anywhere else at all in the world. And so that makes it even more difficult not to be able to collect these things and analyze them. That just would drive me crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why, it's so every day, every week they're destroying hundreds of acres in the Amazon, and it could be the next cure for cancer or what have you. And in fact, Richard Schultes discovered, did most of the work on the curare, which is a muscle relaxant poison, what used in blowguns, the arrow poison. So the Amazon, very little was known about it until he went down and figured out there were at least 15 or 20 plants involved in producing curare, and it ended up becoming the surgical anesthetic for many, many years, for decades. And
well, if you actually have discovered something that actually feeds on silica, it's a monstrous discovery, just gigantic. It's going to rewrite everything we know. All right, well, I've had you on here a long time. I want to let the audience chime in, but congratulations. If that's really the case, my God. First on caller line, you're on the air with Peter. Hi.
Hi. I'm from Wisconsin here. I'm a truck driver.
Oh, yes.
Okay. My question, this goes on my calendar. I can tell my grandchildren. I actually talked to Art Bell. I want to know if they took precautions before going into the cave of contamination, and if they decontaminated after coming out. I'm thinking fibers from clothing and things like this that these organisms have never had a chance to feed on before, and if they're wondering if there are going to be any long-term consequences of having gone down. The indigenous people stay in that area, but he traveled around the world with all the camera equipment and stuff. And I'm really wondering if any thought has been given to contamination in
It's a
both
very, very good question. You always think of it the other way around, I suppose, Peter. What are we going to run into? What's going to make us sick? But the other way around, what about contaminating the environment you went into?
Well, I think we could safely say, if we were talking to Hazel, that those microbes are pretty happy living on the rocks, and they're not really jumping onto biological organisms and hitching rides and things like that. I mean, more often what happens, I mean, put it this way, we were in a cave with a couple of expert cavers, and I've been in a cave with Peter Strauss before in Oaxaca, Mexico, where we did personally take precautions because we had big HEPA masks that we wore and HEPA suits, and we went in there because very often the bat guano carries a spore that can kill you, basically, and it's actually not the vampire bats you've got to worry about. It's the fruit-eating bats that have this in their feces, and there's also aerosol rabies that you can get in caves from bats. From their urine.
Brother.
And so the good news was, and actually what makes this even more amazing is that this was a relatively starved cave. It's a starved cave on a starved Tepuy. It's one of the reasons these things are eating rocks. It's because there's very little else for them to eat.
The scientists are going to just go crazy trying to figure out what nutritional value can. That one just has me lost, and I'm sure everybody else too. Let's go to Wildcard Line, Houston. Ivan, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm 17 years old. I've been in Ecuador for 5 years. And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever heard of a cave in Ecuador that leads to China?
Wow. A cave to China, huh? I sort of doubt it, but Ivan, don't go away. Peter, I'd say you probably haven't, right?
I haven't heard of a cave in Ecuador that leads to China. Being a big fan of Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, I think we all imagine you could, run on underground tunnels around the world. I don't think that it would be physically possible, though, really.
Let us reverse the question. Ivan, have you heard of such a cave?
Yeah, actually, yes, I have.
What do you know about it?
I don't know much. I was told a story about 6-7 years ago. But yeah, like it's a cave, it's a top secret, and supposedly some of the government knows. And,
I'll tell you what, Ivan, if you would be so kind, simply send me an email and tell me what you do know about it, like its location, that sort of thing, please. And we'll see what we can do from there. I'm Art Bell at lionspring.com. Art Bell, ARTBELL at lionspring.com. And Peter, if people want to get in touch with you, is there a way for them to do that? I mean, you just never know what you might run into.
Right. They can write me at gryphonproductions@hotmail.com. That's GRYPHON Productions with an S at hotmail.com. You can write me there.
Okay. You never know. I mean, there may be somebody with knowledge of a cave or something unusual that nobody knows a thing about except one or two people out there, and you never know what this might drop in your lap. Karen in Spokane, Washington, you're on the air with Peter.
Hi, Art and Peter. I was out in the woods north of Spokane about 10 years ago, and I heard Bigfoot. I was with 5 other people. One of them was a Native American guide for us, and it was unlike anything I have ever heard in my life. And I heard it 7 times.
Oh, well, all right, you heard it. How do you know that it was Bigfoot you were hearing?
He told me that his grandma used to take them out in the woods, and he swears that he has seen Bigfoot, and that he said that was what it sounded like. And I've never heard anything sound like that.
Well, as do many people, so many people have heard. Go ahead.
What did it sound like?
The closest thing I could come to, and it doesn't even sound like it, would be a cougar, but I've heard cougar. It's like kind of between a woman's high screech and a cougar. It was just awesome. That's the closest, but it wasn't really like that, but that's the closest I could even think about relating.
Well, I've heard different accounts of what Bigfoot is supposed to sound like, and I know I've been out with Bigfoot hunters like Rick Knoll, and they actually play back Bigfoot sound in the hope of attracting Bigfoot, and it did sound sort of like what you're describing, a high-pitched sound like that. I've also heard about whistling sounds, and I know for a fact with the native people, the Kwajalein Indians, that when they portray this wild man in the dance, that's what he does. He whistles. He makes this shrill whistle sound. And I always found that really interesting because there's accounts of high-pitched whistles.
Well, I had a recording that was allegedly a Bigfoot, and it'll stand the hair right up on the back of your neck. It's a high-pitched, screeching, inhuman scream, as the old man can put it. Wildcard Line 1, Chuck in Kentucky. You're on the air with Peter from Montana.
Hello, Art. Peter. Hi. I was fascinated when you were speaking earlier on the Jersey Devil. I grew up in South Jersey, right on the outskirts of Lebanon State Forest. And I remember hearing those stories from the time I was about first grade on. And, I mean, contrary to the one thing you had said about killing the parents, I hadn't heard that part of the story. I heard everybody was appalled at the look of this thing, and it went screaming into the night, but it didn't hurt anybody. And go ahead. Well, there's an interesting angle to that human version of the tale, that it could be a human that is more of a demon than anything, right? That it's born as a baby, normal baby, and then turns into this demon, and in some versions it kills the parents. But the interesting angle is that this Leeds family, from which this descendant might have, that the true background to the story might be that this was a deformed child. And in those days, in 1735, if you had a deformed child, the mother might have been, accused of sleeping with the devil or something like that. And so the child may have been kept away, locked in an attic. And indeed, when it came out in public, it might have been cloaked in a cave. And so the black wings of the Jersey Devil may have been a deformed child out in public, covered in this black cape.
All right, but Peter, there's something I want you to hear. I don't have a lot of time for the break, but I'm told that we have that sound. So go ahead, folks, and play it. Let's hear it. And there you go. You ever hear anything like that, Peter?
I actually have heard a similar kind of sound in the ones that Rick was using, and they're set to be, come closer by. I just want to mention that we did pursue the D.D. tales and legends further, the same creatures that ended up, Bigfoot-like creatures that ended up in the book, The Lost World, and, told to the explorers. And the follow-up really is this Deloitte Ape. Deloitte Ape was a creature. The story is that there were two 5-foot-tall ape-like creatures that appeared at night at a camp very close on the border of Venezuela and Colombia. them. And this Francois Deloy shot one of them. And there's a very famous photograph of it. And it appears much, much bigger than any known ape in South America. And speaking of caves, I was able to track down some photographs of a prehistoric spider monkey-like creature that is twice the size of Deloy's ape, found in Brazil. And maybe Deloy shot one of these apes in the 1920s, a holdover, a prehistoric holdover.
All right, hold it right there, Peter. Peter von Puttkammer is my guest. He's an adventurer. He's about to have some video on the Animal Planet, 8 p.m. local time, December 10th. You don't want to miss it. From Manila in the Philippines, I'm Art Bell. Bill in Pompano, Florida says, hey, Art, I went to Google Earth and I looked at it. Would you believe? The mountain is completely hidden by clouds. What are the odds? Peter von Puttkammer is my guest. He's the guy who did the show that'll be on December 10th, Animal Planet, 8 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. It's a 2-hour special. Among other things, they found an organism that apparently eats silica. Now, if that's true, they've made a monstrous breakthrough. I mean, that just can't be. So NASA is going to fund another expedition. Tomorrow night, Sean Carroll, Senior Research Associate in Physics at the California Institute of Technology, time travel, physics, astrophysics, cosmology, field theory, gravitation, that sort of thing. Tomorrow night. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Art Bell, back to Peter in a moment. By the way, folks, finish the promo. I've got a 3-day weekend coming up. 3 days, that is to say, work. George gets a well-deserved day of vacation coming this Friday night, Saturday morning, and I will be here doing open lines. Always open for suggestions, by the way, on what we talk about. Peter, here we go again. First time calling line, Jeremy in Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Peter.
Hi, Art. How you doing?
Okay.
Basically, I'm a big fan of Chuck Fleming. He's a fiction writer. I think when he stumbled across the answer for Bigfoot, he basically stated the reason we aren't finding any bodies because Bigfoot is related to werewolves. And when, of course, a werewolf would die, we turn back into a human. I was wondering what you thought, or if you even heard this theory before.
It's similar to what I said earlier. I mean, the fact that we have not discovered any hard evidence at all, there aren't any bodies, has to allow at least the possibility that this thing is not completely of this world as we know it, Peter.
Well, I mean, the best evidence, the physical evidence that I've seen so far was not in North America, but in Bhutan, near Nepal. And there was a expedition that went over there, and they found some, they were directed to supposedly now this would be like a Yeti type snowman home, I guess, inside of a hollow tree. And they took some hairs from that, and it was sent to England. And I watched an actual news report where the British scientists said, look, we tested this against all the known mammals in that region, and this is something completely different. And I don't know what happened to that.
Well, there's a million things like that, Peter. These things do get tested, and they come up with anomalous results.
Yeah.
And they just sort of get put up on the shelf because they simply can't be explained.
Right. Well.
So I mean, if you're a person who's collected a sample like this, and you send it off to the lab, I've had this done myself, and I know, and you get an anomalous result of some sort. It doesn't mean that you just stumbled into the Holy Grail, because they simply say, well, it's not a dessert, or we don't know, or whatever. But then it gets put up on the shelf.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the criterion. Well, certainly as far as Bigfoot, it does cross over with a lot of other stories and legends in Quebec. You've got Loup-Garou, it's a werewolf, belief. And in South America, one of the theories about the Didis, these Bigfoot-like creatures that be down there, that they get stories about giant sloths, and these creatures get mixed up. That there's giant sloths 15 to 20 feet high. They're even bigger than Bigfoot and 5,000 pounds.
Peter, did you investigate these sightings they had a few years ago in Florida? And if so, what did you conclude?
Skunk-Ape?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know an awful lot, and there were some pictures circulating on the internet about that. And I certainly know that, there's been a lot of serious investigation about the skunk-ape down there. It's one of these, what is a great discovery, though, is Flores Man. Not that, near neck of the woods there anyway, on the Indonesian island. The Hobbit Man. People are always looking for proof of something. Well, for years, Indonesian native peoples have been talking about Orang Pendek, a little man of the forest. And here is this discovery that shows an entire race of human beings that existed as recently, the bones they found were only 13,000 years old. I mean, that's nothing in geological time. And the suggestion is that Flores Man may indeed, even the scientists suspected it would have been around during the Dutch colonial period. So this is an amazing finding, and this human lives on an island with a pygmy elephant and a giant rat. So it's something out of Jules Verne's Mysterious Island, and it's really shedding new light on the native stories about a little wild man of the forest that people live side by side. Similarly, what happened here in North America, and some people think Bigfoot is tied to Neanderthal, right? That it's a collective, memory that we have stories of Bigfoot because our species, Cro-Magnons, lived 60,000 years side by side with a hairier other.
Have you considered one day an expedition to this part of the world? It is a very mysterious part of the world.
To the Philippines.
Oh, Philippines or Indonesia or Southeast Asia in general.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, we're actually putting together a series on missing links right now, and I think some of our stories will indeed take us there to Southeast Asia, and indeed, Flores Man, we might end up pursuing that tale as well in remote islands in Indonesia.
All right, let's go to a wildfire line. Bill in Salt Lake City, you're on the air with Peter.
Hey, Art, first of all, I wanted to say, you're my hero, buddy.
Thank you.
Nailed it right on the head when you said that people need to get out of the country to see what it's really like out there. I have a philosophy that it might be a little extreme, but we should at least do a couple years, coming out of high school and the military to see away from the United States to really get to appreciate what we have here.
I couldn't agree more. At one time it was done by draft, and now, of course, people don't have to go, so they don't, and they don't get a larger sense of the world on there. So, yeah, you're right.
Hey, Art, I don't know if it's still today, but I was in the Philippines in the early 90s in the Navy, and they're saying that there's some islands there that, I guess, are cannibal and the government won't even go there or something like that.
I suspect that's true. Do you have a question for my guest?
Sure do. I was wondering if you come across any traces of prehistoric stuff, or maybe see stuff there in the lost world that would relate to prehistoric things as far as animals.
Right. Well, I mean, we didn't, other than, some of the largest crocodiles in the world and the largest snake in the world, which we, pulled out of 20-foot specimen we pulled out of the swamp there. We didn't, come across hard evidence of dinosaurs. But I will tell you another thing that happened in that when we were talking to Pomeranian Indian shamans, a 90-year-old medicine guy there, and we, Dean, who was our resident cryptozoologist on the trip, he produced a model of a pterodactyl, and he showed it to this guy, and his eyes lit up. He grabbed it and immediately had a word for it. He said, "This is such and such, and wannabe," I think he said, "and this is a creature that would come down from the top of these plateaus and take our children." And now he said that not again like, oh, once upon a time, legends have it that, like this was talked about as something very real and certainly fits in with the Lost World legend.
I'm telling you, Peter, the Aswang here in the Philippines, half human, half animal of some sort, winged, also goes after children. And it's more than just a legend here. I laughed it off, and I don't laugh any longer. It's believed by everybody here. All right, let's go to yet another Bill on another wildcard line. Bill in Las Vegas, close to home. You're on the air.
Yes, hi, Art and Peter. It's a pleasure always to speak to you. Art, you had done a couple of programs on Mel's Hole and the Sounds from Hell, and I wanted to know if Peter could address anything about that, or
I doubt it seriously. I will ask. Listen, there is Peter, the Holy Grail waiting out there, perhaps somewhere in some cave. I wonder if the cavers that you talk to do imagine that it's possible that one day they will come upon a cave that will lead very, very deep into the earth, deeper than man has ever gone.
I think I don't know about it specifically, but you're referring to the place that's basically a bottomless pit, right?
He's referring to Mel's Hole, the story of, basically bottomless pit, yes.
Yeah, and, well, I mean, I don't I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but, caves...
That's why I kind of rephrased the question.
Caves are, one of the reasons, I mean, we go into deep ocean. I mean, it's not that difficult to, go into a submersible and go down, 20,000 feet nowadays, right? But going into a cave is an extreme environment for humans, and it's very difficult. You can't rapidly travel into a cave. It's a slow process of, figuring out, first of all, getting in on the surface level and figuring out how hostile it is as you go in, and if you're going to need breathing apparatus and this sort of thing. But all I'll tell you is, unlike the movie, caves aren't all lit up like in the Star Trek movies. It's darn black in there, and you better have 2 or 3 backup lights when you go in, because once you...
It's a very good point, Peter. And most of the motion pictures, they have this fortunate, lucky, luminous substance on walls that lights their way the whole way down. No, what I was asking, Peter, let me try again, is whether the cavers that we talk to think that there may be somewhere, sort of the Holy Grail of caves, something that would go very, very deep into the earth, much deeper than man has been. I
actually haven't heard that. I haven't discussed that with them. I will tell you about one interesting thing that relates to the Lost World, and that is that they have massive sinkholes there. That's actually something that I would like to go back and investigate. Just like the Roraima Plateau, the documentary is a land cut off from time. They have sinkholes that are, more than half a mile deep.
Peter, I've seen a number of documentaries on these sinkholes, and as you point out, they have their own closed ecology, which has no relationship to that which is above it at all.
And they, these aren't like, limestone sinkholes and water or something. Of course, these are in the jungle, and you basically have a whole new jungle ecosystem just drop down, thousands of feet down. And there may indeed be species there as well. I mean, let's not forget that 2005 in Indonesia, they found this lost world, as it was described. Tree kangaroos, never been seen before. Dozens of species of birds, rodents, brand new to the planet. And of course, in Vietnam in the early 90s, this lost world was found with a large mammal and a blue tongue ox.
Oh, yes.
And so, cryptozoology isn't just about Jersey devils and chupacabras. It's about, living,
breathing creatures, that's right.
Mammalian life forms. And it's surprising how many places on the planet that we continue to find new life. And that's what Arthur Conan Doyle was saying. He wanted to challenge, even in those days, the scientific community, because he was, he probably would have been on this show. He wrote Sherlock Holmes, the most logical character in fiction, but he was also a spiritualist. He believed in life hereafter, and he wanted, writing The Lost World, he wanted to say, science, look, these places in the world, little about, we're finding new animals all the time. There could be a place cut off in time where dinosaurs still exist, and that's what he wanted to say, and that's what we explore in the film.
All right, West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Peter Puttkammer. Hi,
Well, you're concerned, as I am, about the possibility of contamination creating, like maybe the thing that could kill all life on Earth. And by the way, and I can think of a sci-fi horror scenario that would make a terrific movie that would actually be possible within the realm of possibility with these silicon-eating microbes. By the way, I missed the answer of the NASA scientist that you interviewed about a week ago when you asked him about whether NASA was taking precautions when they bring back stuff from Mars.
Okay, well, his answer was with great caution. He said, we're worried about that.
Yeah.
He said, in some of the early missions, it may well be that they did not take the proper precautions, and it is their biggest scare that the contamination has occurred either on the moon or more likely on Mars.
Now, what about if...
And we're going to go up there and find our own life.
Yeah, what about if these microbes were exposed to a city like New York, where everything is concrete or brick? Okay?
Whether they could even survive outside of this little environment that they're in, I don't know, and I guess Peter doesn't know, and I'm not sure we want to find out.
Yeah, they might speed up in light or something like that, that would be the horror story part of it. It would be sort of like gray goo kind of a scenario. The nanotechnology,
Okay, Peter, again, of course, you can't bring samples out, but I wonder if in this next expedition, one funded by NASA, they would bring, I would think they would very much want to bring some of these microbes that eat silica back, yes?
Sure. I mean, it's going to be tested, and I would say, I could ask Hazel some more about this, but they rock-eating bacteria exist all over the planet. We're surrounded by it, and it hasn't killed us off yet. And there's a lot more organic things in our environment that are much more dangerous than something like this. Even man-made things in our environment, such as secondhand smoke and asbestos in buildings and environmentally, hazardous buildings with new building materials.
We got to stop there. We're absolutely out of time.
Okay.
Special December 10, Animal Planet, 8 p.m. local time. Everybody watch it. If you're not interested from what you've heard, then you just weren't listening. Peter, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
You have a good night. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back tomorrow evening with a brilliant man. And among other things, we will talk about time travel. From Manila, in the typhoon-ravaged Philippines, I'm Art Bell. Good night, all.
Please reason for everything.
Yeah, that's a very hard concept for a lot of people.
Oh, and it would be
I
for me
believe that,
too,
sure.
but I live by it. I've learned by it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my friend.
I take care. Yes, I believe every word you're saying. I believe that you absolutely believe every word you're saying, and I think a lot of what you're saying has an absolute ring of truth to those who have stuck around and listened. It's really interesting. Western Rockies, not a lot of time. You're on there with Red Elk. Hello.
Yeah, I'm Walter from Motor here.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to say the mirror, I'd like to ask you about the mirror. I've been using it for about 10 years, and I can prove the existence of God with it, real short and sweet.
With a mirror.
Yeah, I was studying guitar in the mirror about 10 years ago, and I was looking off to the side of the mirror as I was doing it, and I started seeing really weird, evil type things coming in.
Well, I'll tell you, we're heading for one whale of a show on this subject.
But anyway,
The ribbon does twist in turn, creating rips and thinness in the valves that are really all around us.
But I asked God to come in, the Spirit of God to come in, because I couldn't get rid of the evil looking things in the mirror, and everything changed. And believe me, Art, you've been wondering about the mirror.
Yes.
If you sit there, look off to the side and say, Satan, come in, you're not, it'll shock you, it'll scare you almost to death. You won't know how to get rid of it other than by saying, okay, Spirit of God, come in. And that's when everything changes. And it'll teach you, I mean, you don't even have to do anything. You can meditate there and feel safe, and you'll start learning things that you've never, ever learned before. Now,
I hear you.
and I've been seeing spaceships from it. I've been learning stuff from God. And one thing about I wanted to say that I've been learning from God was you have the thing on about Fatima on there, the secret.
Third
Well,
season.
this isn't about the secret. This is about the solar event. And God is very disturbed that the sun bounced up and down. It's on film. It's on motion picture film.
Sir, I'm woefully short on time here.
Yeah, we got only about
Okay.
5 minutes.
You want to email me, and I will proceed to follow up on it. There are solar events going on right now. We have this big full halo ejection. It's actually hitting Earth right now, and we've got a gigantic solar storm going on. Auroras may be seen. Red Elk, boy, what a pleasure to have you on the air again. You're a strange sort, Red Elk, but you know there's
Stick around and I will give you that thing.
indeed. I just wanted to tell you, you're strange, but you're absolutely intriguing. I mean, there's something about you. So I'm certain we will have you on again. In the meantime, I'm going to put you on hold and talk to you after the show. Okay?
Yes, love to all and all love, please.
Good night, Red Elk.
Good night, my friend.